All right, welcome back for our final match of the night here for Week 2, Modern Horizons 3. And we got an interesting match here. We got Zack H, who is not quite a new player to our server, but played in one league 2 years ago and is now back for a second league. And he's facing off against Preston, who's been with us for a few leagues this year. What's going on in his hand over there?
Well, Preston kept a hand already with his Jaunt colors fixed. Uh, just a Golgari dual land, 2 mountains, reiterating bolt, galvanic discharge, fanged flame, so lots of burn, and the single lonely creature is an Eldrazi linebreaker that he cannot fix without neutral mana yet.
So we see a pretty big threat here for Zack here on turn 2. He did have a Nightshade Dryad he could have played to set up his mana, since he doesn't have other lands in hand, but this is such a problem if you can't get off the board. And it sounds like Preston had some burn spells for it, which Zack can dump his whole hand to keep his frog alive, but likely shouldn't if it gets targeted. Let's see what Preston decides to do here. I think
Well,
your opponent doesn't emote thinking on turn 2, but when you play a psychic frog, you can give your opponent a moment here.
honestly, I do hope Zack is unhinged enough to try. I have successfully done the Psychic Frog Gambit, and you have to respect getting killed in 3 strikes, including a flying creature, is really threatening. The only way to kill this frog is with heart removal.
Would you be surprised
And
if I said that in this spot I would never discard any cards to keep it alive?
and I already did it twice. Once successful, and once he was lucky and top decked a exile effect.
Look, we are
The
doing it. He says, "I'm going to drop 3 cards, but I'm going to make them back here, and it's going to be all
Okay,
good times from here on."
to make it even more spicy, the most recent draw was a Breathe Your Last,
Uh oh.
but he is currently missing the second black source to cast it.
So if he does get a breather last this turn, how many cards is he up? Psychic Frog discarded 3 but drew 1, and Preston has
He
to
would
use
be
two
up
cards
two
against it.
cards.
I mean, pretty good, but
Yes.
as it stands, there is trouble here. Yeah, like I said, I know some people like to go all in on this card. Me, I just play it. If they have the burn spell, I'm not dumping my whole hand, because if it goes south, I probably lose the game. But
There is a feeling of safety in the fact that he tried to cast Fanged Flames in the first place on the frog, because discarding 2 cards isn't that bad. If we were to throw away his full hand and hit for 6 first, then he could have killed him in 3 turns.
yeah,
He did not fully commit to that kind of unhinged madness,
yeah.
so that's one thing.
So left in hand here is Dream Drink Vampire, Grave Dig, and then Snapping Voidcrawl, which is the turtle, the Eldrazi turtle. And he's drawn Mindless Conscription here. He may just run it out to have a 3/3. I mean, he doesn't have the mana to entwine the Grave Dig, and this is certainly better than a Dream Drinker Vampire. Yeah, like I said, don't know too much about Zack. I know that with his username here, he is definitely after my heart, whether he knows it or not. Um, and here goes the frog. So I mean, he drew. So it's probably too late at night for me to figure out what kind of exchange it was. But he discarded three
It's
cards and drew two
one.
cards. And opponent spent 2 removals. Anyway, move
If
on.
if we are counting the frog as a card as well, it is basically a 2 for 1.
All right, thank you.
Uh, he went he went 1 card down and trading removal for creature.
Yeah, I mean,
But for he also cost the opponent 4 life and a heart removal spell. It's fair enough.
yeah, I mean, Zach discarded 2 expensive cards that he wasn't going to cast anytime soon, from what we've seen from his draws. Even with the extra draws, he hasn't drawn lands. He did discard that Wither in Bloom, which he might have wanted to use as a removal at some point. Um,
Preston actually casting Consuming Corruption for 1.
in a 3-color deck, I like
Uh,
it. I don't love it, but I love to.
I was about to say, he's in like solid Jund and still is using corruption for what I would say completely worth it.
Yeah, like I had that in a 2-color draft deck today, and I still with like 11 sources of black, and it still wasn't great every time. But a bit of trouble here with the mana situation. Unfortunately, he's not drawing too many cards he can cast. He's drawn Volatile Stormdrake, which is another. It's kind of another. It's that's a very hit or miss card, I find. Um,
It's mostly a miss. You have
that's
to
been
get
my
really lucky to put.
experience. I've seen it lose the game for people more than it's won the game, but maybe Zack knows something we don't. But Psychic Frog is coming back here. He's back.
And that's what I like to see. This thing is a menace.
Yeah, just the lack of lands might just end up costing him the game here. But he does have more cards in hand than Preston. But Preston probably has more options for his turns.
He in fact does not.
Oh,
He
just
drew
lands.
swamps the last two
Uh
turns,
oh.
and now he is casting his Eldrazi Linebreaker, which is his last actual play. After this, it's going to be lots of Propagator Drone triggers, and hopefully some big creature to evolve them later.
Yeah, that would be the goal. Eldrazi Linebreaker. I mean, we'll see how many cards Zach wants to discard to this Psychic Frog. We saw him discard 3 cards earlier. Let's see what he does here. But the game's in quite a different spot than it was earlier. Unfortunately, he does have to sack his. I guess if he had nothing else, he could have made a drone, a spawn, and so at least got one evolve here,
That is true.
and an extra pump on this Linebreaker. He says,
Mhm.
if you want to discard your whole hand to eat my Linebreaker,
If he does that, things are turning really grim for him. And I do think that Zack could be emboldened by him having only one card in hand. The only good thing is he cannot suss out the fact that he doesn't have an instant by paying attention to the priority yet, until he uses his propagator drone.
yeah, like I said, I mean, using the drone to make a spawn to then the spawn will have an extra power, and the Linebreaker will get an extra pump. So he has a Storm Drake here. He's thinking about just grabbing this Linebreaker. He's also drawn 6 for the turn. So still no lands, but he's getting along here with, despite the lack of mana. And here comes
Well,
the attack. He says, "I'm just gonna make a spawn, and I'm gonna block because I don't want you to draw any more cards."
I don't think Zack is going to let him do that. He is perfectly able to exile cards from the
Absolutely.
graveyard.
Yep, absolutely not. So yeah, Psychic Frog, obviously a callback to the old card. I think it was Psychotog, which was a much
Mhm.
worse version than this, but yeah, makes sense being 20 some odd years ago.
Callbacks and
Still no
callbacks and
lands.
nostalgia.
Still no
Oh, that is
lands. He's drawn out a
well.
5-drop.
On the one hand, it's bitter. On the other hand, he has lots of gas to throw into that frog and really see what happens. He
Yeah,
is choosing.
yeah. My issue with this volatile Stormdrake is that a 3/2 flyer is such a real card that the thing you have to be taking has to be significantly better than a 3/2 flyer, and on this board, Linebreaker does not fit that description. I would say. Hopefully, it
In
won't
this
come back to bite him.
position, I think in this position that was actually a really smart play, just because he knows that Preston is now in top deck mode, and if he were to draw some huge creature, it would be really beneficial to make use of the haste and finish Zack off. Not having the line breaker to speed up whatever he is going to top deck really makes a difference.
Yeah, I mean it's just worse than any removal spell that he could have drawn, but I mean it still accomplishes, not being threatened by this line breaker anymore. And he does have a Path of Annihilation in hand, which if he ever gets his land, which he still hasn't, will be kind of scary with the line breaker.
That is a maddening situation, but this is just the typical story of Flood against Screw.
Yeah, and it turns out that discarding those 3 cards earlier in the game didn't really come back to bite him because he never drew the lands to cast anything. And he's played a Brain Searcher, which has only found him one additional land, which is kind of shocking here. He sees a Crabomination now, but he's pretty far from casting that.
If the line breaker gives the buff, is it only haste or is it also
It
trample?
does not grant Trample. It itself has Trample, but does not grant it.
Hmm.
But he can have a pretty beefy attack now.
Oh, very beefy. Both with the zombie and just threatening the pump on the frog. Could turn lethal if he doesn't block the right ones this one.
Well, he knows he has to block something, because
Yes, most likely he has to trade the Storm Drake for the zombies, right?
seems to be. Yeah, he's just going to give flying here
Or,
to deny the chump block with the 0-1.
although I guess it makes more sense to maybe take out the Storm Draker. Take 1 damage and take away the haste, chumping the zombies instead.
Okay, so he's making a 0-1. Not sure what the 0-1 is going to be doing here. I guess just... Okay, so he is putting that in front.
Oh,
Okay. So he's just going to discard 2 cards here. Like I said, with the lack of lands, discarding these cards is like, doesn't even matter that much.
hmm. Uh, I like that he wants to deny Zack the card draw and just keeps on hoping the bad luck is going to make it, well, keep things at bay for now.
Yeah, he's going to need something good to get himself out of this though, because now he's facing down a lot of potential damage, especially with another creature gaining haste next turn.
But having looked at his deck, there is a Kozilek waiting to be cast. It's thinning out his deck right now from with 1 less lands. It's just going to increase the chance of getting the big lottery ticket one of these turns.
Yeah. Until then, what did he pick up this time? Okay.
An Arcbound Condor.
I mean, it's okay, but doesn't quite solve the issues at hand here. Could stand in
True,
front of a could stand in front of a creature, but
the last card, this swamp is now putting us at 9 mana, which is threatening, especially if Zack already checked out his pool as well.
yeah, he has access to another mana here even with the making another
Mm.
spawn. So with a 5-drop and
But
a 6-drop on top of his deck, we'll see if Zack decides to sack his land or not. One of those cards on top of the deck is a Crabomination. No, he just says, I'm going to stay at 4 lands here. I, I have no problem staying at 4 lands. I got a Psychic Frog. I got a Line Breaker. I'm, you know, I'm in charge. And I think he's thinking.
facing an opponent without cards in hand is quite emboldening, so I understand it. What kind of plays does he have at 4 mana right
Yeah,
now?
there's Path of Annihilation, 6, Serum Visionary, Utter Insignificance. He has a 5-drop in hand that he
Mm.
can't cast. So Path of Annihilation sets him up for future turns, but I mean, if he's trying to end the game now, that's not really the best, but it does give extra pumps to this line breaker, so that's something. And he has decided on that.
Mm.
He said, now that I have this, I'm set on mana, basically, for the last couple turns of this game. I can play more than one thing a turn, which he has not been able to up to this point. And most importantly, he can play his crab next turn and hopefully just seal the game.
Yeah, we are going to see how far Preston will have to go to block this attack.
I mean, we got a 6-3 trample, we got the frog and a 3-3. It's a rough one here. I mean, he's not dead, but it's getting close.
Mm.
So it puts out a 0-1. That can get in front of the non-trampler.
This game is going to be decided by whatever is the top card of his deck right now.
Yeah, he'll probably need like more than just one top deck though. But like we saw earlier, more than one top deck can be done.
Besides more than one, like I said, if he is going to, and he is able to, resolve that single Kozilek, he would be able to draw 4 cards and take out 2 cards out of Zack's hands by forcing him to manifest them.
Yeah, but the frog is still at play here,
Mm.
and the frog can now get pumped by the line breaker if he wants to. Once there's no flying blockers, it's just gonna win. So it looks like he's setting up a chump block here. Um, Interesting that he's not throwing his other spawn in front of the 3-3. Interesting. Surprised he didn't throw his other
I
spawn away here.
and that is
Mm, yeah, that'll do it. So we see the psychic frog really carrying a lot of the weight here, uh, while Zack was having trouble drawing lands. He just resolved a couple of really important spells, and they more or less went the distance.
I did not keep count, but he would really draw a lot of cards after having what seemed to be a solid hand, uh, without getting that desperate land for a long time. Uh, it's just the probabilities in Magic and getting the land screw.
Yeah, so his land count looks
Uh,
fine here. It looks like 23 plus two double face cards, which
hmm?
is it's 25. I would probably usually run an extra land here. I usually roughly go, I take out a land for every two double face, but 25 lands, you should still be drawing more than four or three in a game.
Preston boarding out the Consuming Corruption,
Yeah, I think he.
uh, and he's also thinking about his reiterating bolt, it seems. But well, he does have a lot of cards that pack power. Wormcoil Lava,
Yeah,
Persist, which basically is almost like a 2-mana reanimate, minus the pesky payment of life. Um, and we're off.
okay. So yeah, Zach playing a Sultai deck as we saw, basically evenly split for all the colors. Doesn't appear to have any. His colors seem to be mostly evenly split across all three. And well, this hand's getting sent back. I could name the cards, but none of them are lands. So
Preston, on the other hand, decides to keep a 2-lander, fixing Golgari lands, which is fine because most of his hand is also 2-mana, black and green with a Propagator Drone, Within Bloom, Eviscerators, Insect, and then a Course Marauder. The only card he is not going to play for a long while is a Furnace Hellkite.
yeah, Zach's just getting like needlessly punished for his deck here. He had no lands, then one land, and last game only drew the three for the longest time. I mean, like I said, the first thing I did when we went to Cyborg was just check how many lands, just because sometimes people maybe go a bit lower than they should. But he's at 23 lands plus two double face, which is enough sources. Like 20, it's 25 lands basically. Um, so it's definitely
That
enough. He's not skimping on lands here and suffering as a result. He's just suffering. But he did win the first game, so he's kept a pretty functional hand. He has Dream Drinker, Vampire, and Mindless Conscription to go with two lands. But I think he was depending on this Tameo to really pull him through, and unfortunately, that just dies right away.
Yes, that Tamio would have taken a similar position as the Frog did last game.
Yeah, unmulliganing. Unmulliganing is a big deal here.
Absolutely. And Preston having so many playable cards in his hand, and this time a proper combination of lands and creatures, is going to pay off
So
rather quickly.
a wither and bloom drawn for the turn might get the attention of this propagator drone, perhaps. He could just play out his mindless conscription. Yeah, I mean the one card you don't want to see after propagator drone is the rising writhing chrysalis. That you definitely don't want to see that after a propagator drone. I almost feel like I've forgotten that card just because I played the open all weekend and barely saw any of it, but the card still exists as far as I know.
I would have imagined you would have seen it a lot, not in the drafting segment, but usually in the gameplay.
I did two drafts on day two, 8 rounds, never saw one, and I did three drafts today, just like best of three drafts. So I played 9 rounds, and I saw none were cast. I think people have realized you don't pass them, and therefore people don't get the decks that have multiple of them too often. Um,
Well, not to take down your credit, but that explains how you won so much.
well, I will say my decks didn't appear great to me when I looked at them. But then I realized, okay, I'm drafting against people that actually know what they're doing. Therefore, everyone's deck is going to look a little worse at the outset. Anyways, on to this onto
In
this
the
turn
current
here.
game, I have a question. Does he have a way to draw his second and third card, pumping up the zombies to a 6
Oh,
6?
he's got a Wither and Bloom and 2 lands, so he's not doing too much here. So he can
But
he can
maybe the
-3. He can adapt. He can play lands.
Hmm. But the problem is Preston does not know this.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
again, not a very strong turn for Preston here. Just playing this retrofitted transmogrant. Not a super powerful turn here.
mhm.
So he just
I
attacked
I
knowing that he
think
had to use
he
it. I mean,
I think he took a wait and see approach here because the Wither and Bloom and the Curse Marauder are both good ways to remove some pressure and buy himself some time.
yeah, and with
So
yeah,
I really think he wanted to wait out the opponent's plays and just jump block like he did.
yeah, it makes sense. When your opponent's on a multi-5, you could take liberties that you may not be able to in other games. Just being able to take time and know that your opponent is down on cards, and you can kind of be a bit more liberal with your plays. All right. He
Absolutely.
says,
Having
now that I've seen the propagator drone, I don't like it. I want it gone. Okay.
Which is a good play. He loses the best sacrifice for his Eviscerator's Insight in hand to further build up the card
Oh,
advantage.
we got a nice draw here. We got just about one of the best draws you could think of here, which is Unfathomable Truths.
Oh
So he's going to get to
no.
reload, and he's going to get to put 3 counters here.
hmm
Just like we
That
drew
is
it up.
putting the life that is putting the life count to 25 to 9, which is actually really threatening considering the position he started the game on.
Yeah, I mean, multi-5, he's making it work here. I mean, it's been helpful that opponent has not been hitting lands, and the plays have not been super impactful. Like a propagator drone that doesn't do anything throughout the course of a game is not a good card, right? 2 mana 2/2 blank text, it's just not a card anymore. And the transmogrant just coming in and chump blocking also not very good. So and Zack's got some pretty good follow-ups here. He's got Emperor of Bones, which is that rare skeleton that can grab things out of the graveyard.
Fantastic card.
And he's
Preston
got
on the other hand
Eden
only had
Gargantua too.
poison.
So
Oh,
oh
Preston on the
well,
other hand only had oh boy.
we could also just say the game's over because he drew a mindless conscription here. So even
Oh
attacking with the low
my.
one, yeah. So multi-5, but Preston's hand was just a little too clunky and unimpactful, and Zack drew exactly what he needed to win. That unfathomable truth really turning the game really in his favor and getting him the win in his first ever feature match. So congratulations to Zack H, and we'll see everybody back next week.